If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or a song, if I can show somebody that they're traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. If I can help somebody as I'm traveling on, then my living shall not be in vain.
Good morning. I want to welcome you guys to a beautiful, beautiful Sunday morning. If this is your first time visiting us, welcome. We appreciate you. And after service, if you're interested, there's always coffee and great conversation downstairs. So we want to welcome you to that. We've got some amazing announcements coming up, one of them being the 75th anniversary of the temple. And so as you came in this morning, you would have seen this nice flyer that you guys got. And it's going to be on September 15th and 16th, and they've got over 20 activities planned. So if you want to participate in that, you're welcome to. Bring some friends with you. It'll be a great way to spend some time and experience things such as meditation, sound healing, a lot of different things going on. So if you want to find out more information on that, go to unitytemple.com. And now we will begin our service with the temple chimes, the opening prayer, and the call to inspiration by Aaron. If you'd recite this with me. On this day, we dedicate ourselves to peace on earth. We accept ourselves without harsh judgment and express appreciation for our individuality. We live without fear to meet the events of this day with confidence. We accept others without prejudice to experience a sense of unity with all people. We honor our earthly environment and recognize a sense of oneness with all creation, in harmony with ourselves, our lives, other people, and all of nature. We live this day with a peaceful mind, a peaceful heart, and a peaceful spirit. Thank you, God. Amen.
God speaks to me in a accents sweet and tender. His promise comes through life to be my guide. In pastures green and pleasant paths to lead me, with rest and shade, the quiet stream beside. Thanks to be to thee, O ever-loving Father, for all my wants thou dost full I provide.
Think of your fellow man, lend him a helping hand, put a little love in your heart. You see it's getting late, oh please don't hesitate, put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place, and the world will be a better place for you and me. You just wait and see. Another day goes by and still the children cry, put a little love in your heart. I hope when you decide kindness will be your guide, put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place, and the world will be a better place for you and me. You just wait and see, wait and see. Hey, take a good look around, and if you're feeling down, put a little love in your heart. I hope when you decide kindness will be your guide, put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place, and the world will be a better place for you and me. You just wait and see people now. Put a little love in your heart. Put a little love in your heart. You've got to put a little love in your heart. Put a little love in your heart.
Good morning, everyone, once again. So this morning, I want to talk to you about the Christ teachings. Some of you may be familiar with that term, some of you may not. Each one of us in our walks and our spiritual understanding have probably at some point in time come across one of the teachings. Cassie, would you put up that slide with the 3 books on it, please? So on here, you're going to see 3 different books. The one in the middle is one that most of us are familiar with from our upbringing. That's the Bible. The one on the left is a book called The Way of Mastery, and on the right side, you're going to see A Course in Miracles. Each one of these books have Christ's teachings in them. What is that? On the next slide, you're going to see a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it says, "The teaching is merely a vehicle to describe the truth. Don't mistake it for the truth. A finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. The finger is needed to know where to look for the moon, but if you mistake the finger for the moon itself, you will never know the real moon." Now, I want you all, as we're going into this space together, just to pause and reflect. And as you think of different spiritual teachings that you've heard throughout your life, maybe you were raised in a more traditional Christian setting, maybe you were raised in Buddhism, or there's so many different religions out there, wherever you were raised at, would it be true that perhaps you've run across a teacher who is really focusing on that finger rather than the lesson itself? And at some time in your journey, you said there's something more to this, and then you somehow, in your own journey, started that search for what else is there? What else could I be missing? Something here doesn't feel right. And so that begins your own journey, and those are the questions that we begin to explore. Can you go to the next slide, Cassie, please? In the Bible, Matthew 7:7-8, "Ask and it shall be given to you, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened." As you reflect on your journey, once you started to ask the questions, what miraculous thing began to happen? And I believe that in most of your journeys, new teachers started to arrive. Now, in our upbringing, maybe it was that there's one specific place that you find through Jesus Christ, you will find salvation. I grew up in a Methodist church in very rural Missouri, and I heard that a lot. The thing that they did for us there was me and one other child in this entire congregation. They would have us sitting down and reading scripture. So he'd read a line, I'd read a line. And Rory was just really not enjoying that. So early on, it really turned me off from studying the Bible because I really thought, well, I feel like something's being missed here. Then I'd go to the Sunday service, and I had to take an extreme amount of caffeine just to be able to stay awake through most of the services. That's just me being honest, and I'd still fall asleep most of the time. So as a young child, my mother's not necessarily there to support us, I'd walk up the street to the Nazarene church at that point in time, but it just didn't really connect with me. So I thought, there's got to be something different. And so the questions for me came along early. Sometimes they don't come till later on. Don't hold yourself in a lot of judgment because of that, because you're exactly where you need to be in your spiritual walk right now for the next stage of your growth. Would you go to the next slide, Cassie? In Lessons in Truth by Emily Cady, this is Unity Teaching. In entering upon this course of instruction, each of you should, so as far as possible, lay aside for the time being all previous theories and beliefs. By doing so, you will be saved the trouble of trying all the way through the course to put new wine into old wine skins. As I'm talking to you and as Ace is talking to you about the Christ teachings, That's not, I don't know if that's a term that Ace would use for it, but what that means is these are all from that source energy, because if you really understand and if we've really studied what do we believe God to be, God is omnipotent, omnipresent, so he in everything. So it could be the man out on the street who's never written a book. He can't even write. He may say something so profound to you, but because you're dismissing him as just the man on the street, you may miss the lessons that's there for you. So it's keeping an open mind as you're exploring these principles to say, well, what stands out to me? You're about to hear from two different authors, two different books, same teacher. A way of mastery is a channeling of Jesus' energy. Whether or not you believe in that, that's fine. That's not the important part. Don't focus on the finger, focus on the lesson. I don't want you to ever get hung up on that. Even as you're looking at the Bible and maybe you've been turned off from your upbringing, your original religious beliefs, and you've really gotten hung up. Well, my minister, he cheated on his wife. Hey guys, hopefully in your journey of forgiveness, you realize that people are people and they're going through the human experience and that no one's perfect. And usually if they're trying to portray that my life is flawless, I've never done anything wrong, be a little bit suspect of that individual. Not saying that they are, but if you cling on to they're the perfect individual in this experience, I need to duplicate their life exactly, you're probably in for a big surprise once the life comes and challenges you in some way, shape, or form. Would you go to the next slide, please? So the first lesson is going to come from A Course in Miracles, and I want Ace to speak on this, so I don't even want to cover this one. Do you want me to read the quote, or you want this part? So Ace is going to cover his concept, and I'm going to go through A Way in Mastery. And so Ace, if you aren't familiar, also teaches A Course in Miracles here on Monday nights.
Do I have to stand up?
No.
Oh, good. Nothing I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place, means anything. Okay, what? So this comes from A Course in Miracles, the workbook. And the workbook is a means of unwinding our mind, thinking anew. Frankly, it is a very neuroscientific treatise to help us reconsider perhaps that which we have learned so that we can learn anew. And so it starts off with this silliness, I will say, because it does ask us to come with a blank slate. And this being the first of the workbook readings, it's just setting the platform for the furtherance of those readings. Now, there are 365 workbook lessons, one for every day of the year. Consider this your reps and sets. If you're weightlifting or you're doing anything to gain mastery, it is the workbook for students that leads us to a new way of thinking and believing and perceiving. And so this is the first of those, and it is asking us to come with an open mind. And perhaps as opposed to your experience with Bible teachings or being in church, maybe that's our first experience. If this is your first experience to A Course in Miracles or Christ teaching, as you mentioned, then this is simply a call to recognize that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. And perhaps you've heard that before relative to A Course in Miracles. I struggled with it for years, but the idea is very simple. And the opening workbook lesson leads us to the simplicity, which is to be rid of that which you thought you knew in order to get a sense of your truth within. And these lessons follow this first one in, frankly, a miraculous way. It's just riveting. Makes sense?
Absolutely. And as we're continuing to venture into these spaces, looking at these different books, really reflect on your journey and how often it is that you contrast a new idea based off of old understandings. Some people lock themselves in and say, well, everything that I need to know I've already learned. It doesn't matter how old we are. Maybe we're 20 and trapped in an 80-year-old body. How many of us have ever felt that way? Because our bodies might be changing, but our minds are always as young as we want them to be. That exploration, that curiosity. There was a book, it had mentioned something about having the curiosity of a child. If any of you have ever read that, maybe, a little bit in the Bible. And so that's the approach to have, is that open-mindedness. So A Course in Miracles was not written at the same time as Way of Mastery. These books were written basically around the same time period by two completely different people, that the chances that they ever had any interaction is very, very slim to none. But you'll see a lot of principles that underlie both. And also goes back with the Bible of understanding the history of the Bible, but also what Jesus was trying to accomplish by that. A lot of us in our more traditional upbringings were taught really to focus on Jesus, like the only way you're going to find salvation is through Jesus. But in my understanding and study is that Jesus was just a guy trying to point back inward. But as we observe and as we look at our own journey, as we look at a lot of teachers, often they're pointing outside of ourselves for the solution. The various spiritual teachers throughout time were always pointing back inward. Once you really dive into the studies, it was always something inside of you. But if all we do is judge based off of this outside experience that we've had, we'll often miss what is that lesson lying deep within from this experience. And so having that curiosity that Ace was just talking about is key to the next phase in your journey. And it's not saying this is where you need to be. No, where you need to be is where you're at. And that's part of the acceptance part. The next part I'm going to talk to you about is in the Way of Mastery. This comes from teaching number 4. So A Course in Miracles structured for Way of Mastery. I can't really speak on A Course in Miracles because I've not studied that. Ace is the expert. But you will never consider yourself an expert, because why is that? Why would you never consider yourself an expert on any course material?
I'm just a student of the work, and as a student, we also become teachers of the work. Should we accept that role? And so there's a section called the Manual for Teachers, which is perhaps those who've experienced or accepted certain of the principles, because then it's a series of readings about how then to act from that place, how to be from that place. And so we're all teachers as we are students.
I appreciate that. Way of Mastery, Teaching 4. The pathway to awakening. The way to the heart, the way of the heart, must begin with the decision to embrace the truth that is true always. I am a creator of all that I think and see and experience. I am free always. Nothing impinges upon me but the thoughts I have chosen to hold within. Nothing imprisons me but my own perception of imprisonment. Nothing limits me at any level or dimension of experience save that which I have chosen. Sit with that for a moment. What you have chosen. So in your experience, what have you chosen? In each day, if you are judging it as a good day or a bad day, is that the truth? Or is that just the truth that you are choosing to hold on to at that instance? This level of awareness, not everyone's ready for it. A majority of you have come here for a reason. Each one of you, as Ace just spoke, you're both teacher and you're student. You don't have to be in that teacher position. You are allowed to if you choose to, because there's someone who's coming right behind you who you are the one person in their realm of experience that can give them that shift of understanding if you choose to. And that's patience, and that's love that you have to exert for yourself, that you have to feel that deep within your being as you go out into your day. What position do you want to be in? But never be so full to be like, I already know it all. Who's this little 3-year-old kid? What's he going to teach me? Well, maybe how to have a good attitude about life. Can you still be teachable? Yeah, you might have to discipline the kid or something like that, but if you were to say, this child is my teacher, can you? Can you seek out the lesson in that? You just stubbed your toe. You were angry. Could you find a lesson in that? Possibly. Not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong. And a lot of this, it's not about telling you. Let me tell you how to live your life. This is what's right, this is what's wrong. If you do this, you're going to heaven. If you do this, you're going to hell. How interesting. And look at that with curiosity of like, because some people are really locked into that. And a lot of people get fearful based off that. But can you create some sense of curiosity and say, well, do you like that feeling? No? Okay. Would you maybe like to explore something different? Yeah. And then Don't give them a full-blown sermon, but could you create a new question in their mind? And maybe there's other people who think like that. Maybe you're not the first person in this line, and then the doors begin to open. So the next thing I'd like for Ace to speak about is forgiveness. And the reason being, a lot of us hold ourselves in judgment in different ways. And maybe it's someone who has wronged us in some way, shape, or form. But that forgiveness is not just of that individual, but it really starts with yourself. And so both of these Christ teachings have different ways to talk about forgiveness. So I'd like for Ace to share some of that.
From A Course in Miracles perspective, not from my family experience. Okay. All right. Forgiveness always starts with the self. If you grew up thinking that somehow God is a forgiving God, well, if God is perfect love, and if under the pretense of the first principle and the unity principles that God is everywhere and in all things, and if in fact God is love, then she doesn't sit in judgment of our ill acts. She only loves us. And that's a challenge for us to come to understand, because we want to project onto a God that we've made in our human eyes that is like us. And we're pretty quick to judge. So erasing that thought and recognizing, therefore, that the forgiveness, the act of forgiveness, the thought of forgiveness is that of forgiving ourselves for any lesser than thoughts. You see, we deceive ourselves into thinking that this experience, this bodily experience, is so real and the only experience that we fail to recognize our spiritual essence. Do you mind if I read a paragraph?
No, please do.
I really didn't know what I was going to talk about this morning, and so I just opened the book. Oh, man.
Well, I'll let him look for that, and I'll go to Way of Mastery on forgiveness. And rigid flexibility. Don't take yourself too seriously. Like, life is random, and the more you enjoy and you can laugh, the more you're going to enjoy it. Way of Mastery on forgiveness. When next, then, something is reflected to you by the world that causes you to become angry, causes you to be in judgment, stop right where you are and look. Not with judgment of your judgment, but with innocence and honesty. Oh, I see that I am judging someone. That's an interesting cloud passing through my sky of awareness. I wonder if I might be able to make another choice. It's passing through the sky of your awareness, like the cloud. Sometimes when you're looking at the cloud, you're like, I'm going to identify with that cloud. I'm going to cling on to it. That's the perfect sky. The perfect experience is there. That cloud is just a passing thought. Some people cling on to it. Like, I got angry today. So rather than just being like, what a curious cloud. Look, it kind of looks like a dog. And then you just let it continue to pass by. It's like, no, I'm going to cling on to that cloud. No, it's slipping away. Dang it, I'm going to hang on to that cloud. That cloud's been gone for a long time. And then it's shifting back that focus of it's a perfect sky. In your experience, the same thing. You're going to have a lot of different clouds pop up. Have that curiosity, like, that's an interesting cloud. The emotional ups and downs. But then that begins a stage of forgiveness.
So I really appreciate the way you've staged this. That is that the Bible has extraordinary meaning to me. And if you've never attended a class on the metaphysical Bible led by Reverend Sandy Campbell, it's worth your time, because it just puts new meaning in interpretation, as does this work for me. I sometimes, as someone who loves this work, because I don't know of a spiritual teaching or a Christ-infused teaching that so clearly puts it right in your own face, this choice between the body and spirit, and recognize that our spiritual essence is what this is about. And the forgiveness of ourselves when we fail to do that is the message of that forgiveness. I've completely lost the paragraph I was going to read, but one that has particular meaning to me is that now, the word now, and you hear that from this stage quite often, has no meaning to the ego. The present merely reminds of its past hurts, and it reacts to the present as if it were the past. The ego cannot tolerate release from the past, and although the past is over, the ego tries to preserve its image by responding to it as if it were in the present. It dictates your reactions to those you meet in the present from a past point of view, obscuring their present reality. In effect, if you follow the ego's dictates, you will react to your brother as though he were someone else. And this will surely prevent you from recognizing him as he is. And you will receive message from him out of your own past, because making it real in the present, you are forbidding yourself to let it go. You thus deny yourself the message of release that every brother offers you now. So we often talk about this love of brother and this experience. Forgiving ourselves for failing to do that is the point of forgiveness in this work. And I think well supported by Jesus, both by influencing this work, but also in the messages of the Bible and his own way of living.
I appreciate that. So as we're sitting up here and kind of sharing these ideas, there's nothing specific that needs to come across with these teaching. Is really a surrendering to the experience of life, letting go of a lot of the judgments and expectations that we have of ourselves, and being receptive to new ideas, keeping the curiosity very, very high. The perceptions of this is where I need to be at this stage of my life, letting that go, especially in the spiritual development. You're exactly where you need to be and come to a high level of peace with that. There's a lot of different books out there. A Course in Miracles is a beautiful course. It is on Monday nights at what time?
6:30.
6:30 here at the temple. So if anyone is interested in exploring that, you should. And maybe there's a book that we haven't mentioned that's very meaningful for you. It has value. Way of Mastery is the book that came to my awareness about 2 years ago, and that has been a life changer. I never heard of the Christ teachings, and I'd heard of A Course in Miracles, but it never really stood out in my mind until after I discovered a Way of Mastery. And then I started listening to Ace speaking and some other people who are attending, and I'm like, how interesting that these have basically the same meaning. And then I came across another book that was from a Unity minister. It's called Jesus in Mastership. That was a minister who was having a channeling type experience, and I'm not saying you have to believe in channeling as you're hearing me say that, but even exploring the realm of possibility, I'm pretty sure most of us were raised in the more traditional forms of Christianity. Then we're talking about Jesus who was resurrected from the dead and came and appeared to people. But then somewhere, because in my subconscious, I'm like, wait, I need to defend this because some people will be thrown off by the expression of this, of channelings. But then I'm like, hang on. We're always talking about miracles and things that are beyond explanation. And neither of the authors of A Course in Miracles or A Way of Mastery really draw much attention to themselves, because that is not the important part of it. And always look at teachers that are out there, because you probably have friends who are not of the same school of thought as you. I have a very dear friend who's very locked into the prophet. So there's a prophet out in California, and it's like, he's the one. And I'm like so fascinated by the portrayal that this is someone who's painting themselves as being closer to God, closer to Jesus than anyone else. I'm like, how interesting that these people are out there. Then I look that there are thousands of people who fall into that category. So on one end, it's really understanding that there is no separation. When you really get that, then you can look at these different teachers differently. Because if they're ever saying that you need to come to church because that's the only way you're going to find Jesus, that's the only way you're going to get closer to God is through these teachings. But when you really dive into the Bible, when you dive into A Course in Miracles, when you dive into A Way of Mastery, or any of the other teachings that are out there, you'll find out that there is no separation. I don't need to go anywhere to get closer to God. Where I am is as close as I need to be. It's just that shift in awareness of, can I perceive in this instance how close I am and how directly connected I am with Source, whether that be called God, Allah, whatever the label is. Once again, those are getting back to labels. Same thing when you, go ahead, Ace, you have a thought?
To your point that we are that spiritual essence, and it's the body that convolutes that notion. And I asked the question, what was Jesus doing from age 12 to 30? Because the Bible tells us a good deal about his youth and about his ministry from 30 to 33, but we don't have a historical account in the Bible as it came to be. There were other gospels. They were not included. They may have given us insight about this. But I must say, the man probably wasn't just doing carpentry, but had quite a bevy of spiritual masters that helped him come to understand, so much so that he's able to die on a cross, reviling the body as not the experience and begging us to come to understand that it is our spiritual essence. And when we fail to recognize that spiritual essence, that is our self-deception. And it is these ways of teaching that lead us to a deeper understanding that we may be deceiving ourselves by being so focused on our pain, on the trials and tribulations, things that are beyond or outside of the scope of love, that we miss the point of the essence of our being, which is this learning experience within bodies to recognize that that's not the important thing. The important thing is the spiritual essence from which we came into this world and from which we will exit this particular physical world, and it's here now for our taking.
Absolutely. I should have probably given a warning at the beginning that we're going pretty deep today, so hopefully you guys are all hanging on and can apply this to your own life, because we're not speaking to you, we're speaking to ourselves. That's the whole exploration. Is it's a reinforcement, it's a curiosity, and it's an exploration of self. And each one of you has so much value. I learned so much from just being in your presence, engaging with you, having coffee, seeing your faces, and I think, wow, what beautiful experiences, what great lessons can be gained from spending time with them, the explorations, but it's with that innocence of, I really don't know anything. I hope by the time that I check out of this experience of my life that I've learned a couple things, came back to some awarenesses. The remembrance is a big word that you're going to hear, the atonement or at-one-ment, and allowance, rather than trying to change, but just allow. When it comes to children, this is very important, very close to my heart, because for many, many years, because of my upbringing, I always thought, I need to get that kid out of that diverse situation so he's not experiencing so many challenges, to where that eventually, in my understanding, matured to a point of there needs to be an allowance for them to be in that situation, but I challenged myself to come up with new understandings to help them see their situation differently. Because for many, many years, I always thought they need to be someplace else. No, that's where they need to be. You see someone going to a church that's way off the beaten path of what you're on, allow it. Like, don't argue with it. Don't say they're wrong. It's how curious. Like, there's elementary teachers for elementary students. There's college teachers for college students. As you are graduating through the classes, keeping yourself open-minded enough not to say, I'm at the top of the pyramid now. I've been studying this stuff my entire life. But just keeping yourself open and saying, what is this next stage of my growth? Maybe it is now that you can't find the next teacher. Maybe that might be your opportunity to start serving in that teacher role or that reminder role, because everything they need is already inside of them. Because if you teach them something and they're not ready for it, they're not going to hear it. Some of you caught one thing out of today's talk and you'll let go of the rest, and that's perfect, because that's what you needed to hear where you're at. And then it's the appreciation. It's the curiosity of, wow, I wonder what these two books hold in store. Danged if I know what you're going to find in there. But perhaps it's worth the exploration yourself of showing up on a Monday night, tuning in. And even if you can't make it to his Monday nights, if you do a search for A Course in Miracles online study groups, you will find some. If you look up A Way of Mastery study groups, you're going to find some. So it's a matter of asking the right questions and then beginning the search. And that goes back to that scripture, seek and ye shall find. So there's a couple of things I'd like to go through as final thoughts. Is there any final thoughts that you have?
No, TED Talks are 20 minutes for a reason, because neuroscientifically people check out after that point. So we've done quite well. But I do love the challenge, and I love the format you've created for this discussion, and I thank you for allowing me to participate with you. You're doing a great job as a young man on your own path and expressing that to people. And so for that, I'm most appreciative.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you. So a few of my final thoughts. This is not a comprehensive list on the books. These are just a few. The Bible, A Course in Miracles, The Way of Mastery. There are so many books out there that I'm not even aware of yet. Why is that? Maybe I'm just not prepared enough for it to show up in my life. But you find the books that's right for you. But if you're in a state in your life to where nothing is resonating, begin the search, come up with better questions. It was always about coming to the world with questions, not with problems. Be conscious of your language. That's another thing, is so many people are very unconscious with the use of their words. Let me tell you about why my life is so messed up. I'm pretty sure the good book, meaning the Bible, says, seek and you shall find. But if all I'm doing is coming to you with everything that upsets me, everything that was wrong with my day, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well did I formulate questions when all I did was rant about what sucked in my day? Not too good, right? But then you say, how can I shift my perception of this day? What can I... Dude, this sucked. Like, today was awful. I got one of the worst diagnoses of my entire life. Okay, that's a space to be in. Don't deny that, saying, well, I need to be beyond this because I've been studying unity principles for years and I know I need to have a positive attitude. Calm down. Be in the space. Give yourself permission. Give yourself forgiveness. Feel the feelings. They are there for a reason. There is so much illness that's created in our bodies because people pent up this anger, this frustration, these feelings, this negativity. Release. Breathe into it. Spend some time with yourself. Allow. That is important. And if there's something healing that you can do out there in the world, it's creating spaces where people can openly express themselves. And they're very fearful to do that. So it may not be easy. You see the guy who's at his child's funeral, and he's not letting those, you see them built up. Well, there's something you can probably glean from that. That didn't just happen. That was through years of reinforced beliefs of this is what a man's supposed to be like. The love of my life has passed away. I see this all the time working in a funeral home, is that here's this, he loved his wife. People are bawling around. You just see him like it is in there. He is just waiting to break, but he doesn't have a space. I'd like to imagine that when he goes home, he does that. No, he's still probably wearing the same mask when he's at home by himself because no one ever gave him that space or permission to be in that. If that's one gift you could bring, just imagine what that would do for the environment of the people around you. Keep information sacred. If someone does find you to be that space, because maybe in your presence is the only space that's created, hold that in very sacred space. Do not go and share that kind of stuff, because if I went and cried with someone, and then they tell everybody about it, then that sacred connection that was just developed has now been diluted. Or follow that feeling more than the words, because words aren't going together as perfectly as I'd like for them to, but you get that feeling that's behind what I just said, so spend time with that. So this is not a comprehensive list. You can go and find the book that's right for you in the right stage of your life. Just begin asking the right questions. And then which book is right for you? Well, that depends. Depends on where you're at. Depends on what you're asking. You might find multiple that you only read one chapter of, and that's okay too. There's no right or wrong. I mean, the Bible is a lifelong study. A Course in Miracles is a lifelong study. Way of Mastery is a lifelong study. But maybe you find one, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this other book's a lot better. Great, awesome. Follow that thought. Just be curious. Have fun. Focus on the lesson. Don't get lost by the author of the book. Even if I say, well, it's a channeling of Jesus, because what he just said is we don't know a lot about Jesus' life. Some of these other books, like Jesus and Mastership, that's kind of covering that missing period of life of Jesus. You say, well, the Bible doesn't say that. Well, the Bible is not fully comprehensive of everything. When we look at it, there's a lot of value in it. But unfortunately, a lot of people have been using it as a tool of pointing at the finger rather than the lessons behind it. So explore that. You're in a great place. Feel it. Pay attention. Forgive any moment and experience before now. Because you are exactly where you need to be in your spiritual journey, in this space for your own growth. This is not for Rory. This isn't for Ace. It's not for the person next to you. It's you. It's your journey. And you're exactly where you need to be, and give yourself permission to be there and love on yourself. So thank you, Ace, very much for sharing with us.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this
As we go into meditation, take a deep breath. Bring yourself back into this moment, which is all that there is. I'm going to read a letter to you, and we're going to spend a moment in silence. So I'd like for you to close your eyes, relax your gaze, and as I read this, if something holds your attention, spend time in that space. But this is a letter to you. Dear kids and former kids, I have a secret to tell you. Nobody meant to keep it from you. It's just that it has been one of those things that's so obvious that people could not see it, like looking all over for the key that you have in your hand. The secret is that you are already completely whole, a perfect person. You are not damaged goods. You are not incomplete. You are not flawed. You are not unfinished. You do not need remodeling, fixing, polishing, or major rehabilitation. You already have within you everything you need to live a wonderful life. You have common sense, wisdom, genius, creativity, humor, and self-esteem. You are pure potential. You are missing nothing. The only thing that can keep you from enjoying all that you already are is a thought, one thought, your thought, not someone else's thought, your thought. Whatever thought you are thinking at the moment that feels most important to think, even more than feeling grateful, alive, content, joyful, optimistic, loving, and at peace, that is the only thing that is between you and happiness. And guess who is in charge of your thinking? Guess who gets to decide where your attention goes? Guess who gets to write, produce, direct, and star in the moment you are in the middle of? It's you, just you, not your past, not the future. Did you ever notice that it never ever shows up? Not your parents. They are all thinking their own thoughts. Or your friends, school, television, situations, circumstances, or anything else. Just you. Thinking is an awesome capability, like any capability. It can be used as a tool or a weapon against ourselves and or others. And just like with any other tool, we can tell whether we're using it for or against ourselves by how it feels. When we think against ourselves or others, we get in trouble. When we don't, we usually stay out of trouble. Feelings exist to warn us away from things we are using to create trouble in our lives and to guide us back to our natural, healthy ability to live our lives to the fullest. So please remember that your thoughts are not always telling you the truth. When we're in low moods, feeling down, our thoughts are not to be trusted. Our IQ drops. When our thoughts pass and we lighten up, our thinking is once again creative and positive, and our IQ goes up. The only way you can feel badly about yourself and your life is if you think badly about them. It is up to you. Every single minute you're alive, it's always up to you. This is the best, most liberating secret I've ever learned, and I want you to know it too. With love. Slowly bring your awareness back to this moment. And remember those words as you go throughout your day. I invite you now to take your love offerings in your hands and join with me in this offering blessing. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I give and all that I receive. And so it is. We bless these gifts and the givers and know that these gifts go forward to bless this temple and all those whose lives we touch.
I see them blue.
Thank you again for joining us today. Hopefully you found something in today's talk that maybe sparked some curiosity, maybe new questions, and encouragement to go out and seek those answers. So if anyone's interested, we are having the coffee and conversation downstairs in the community space, so I welcome you to come join us down there. And now we'll conclude this service with the prayer protection and the peace song. The light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is